If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Today I am joined by Jen Butler, and Jen is an early parenting consultant, and she specialises in everything in terms of preparing parents for life with a baby. So she helps to support babies' feeding, sleep, development, and she really helps to have a thriving baby and confident parenting journey. So today we are chatting about preparing for parenting, preparing parents for a baby. So how do parents, how should or how can parents prepare for a baby? When should parents start to prepare for a baby? How can a mum prepare herself for a baby? And we also go into the more practical side of things in terms of practically what are some things we can do before we give birth. So Jen, as always, is full of amazing information and tips, and she's just a great support out there. So I'm super excited to share this episode with you today. Before I do dive into this episode, I invite you to come and join us inside Fitness Mama. If preparing your body for birth and reclaiming your pelvic floor and core and strength safely is important to you, if feeling confident in your body during and after pregnancy and feeling like you're recovering that strength inside out is important to you, then all of this is available with Fitness Mama. So perhaps you found you're not exercising as much as you'd like to during pregnancy and after birth. Perhaps you're busy, or you've lost the motivation, or you're just not sure about the best way to be looking after your body. Perhaps you've got pelvic girdle pain and abdominal muscle separation, and you're not sure about the best exercises for you. Or you'd like to get back into running after birth and you want the best booster and, I guess, kickstarter possible. Then Fitness Mama is definitely for you. So join us for these convenient, short, easy workouts that you can do from the comfort of your home whilst your bubba is lying next to you, whilst your toddler runs around causing havoc, or at the end of a long day at work. So head to fitnessmama.com. There's a free 7-day trial and the link is in the show notes. Right, let's dive into this episode all about preparing parents for babyhood. Jen, we have been chatting for half an hour now and we've finally hit record. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
I am so excited to be here and happy that we have hit record and can get to business.
So this is the second time we're chatting. So I will link your previous episode in the show notes. But today we're talking about something slightly different, and this is how to prepare, like preparing parents for babyhood, how do we prepare for an upcoming baby? And I'm really excited about this because I feel there's a lot that we're going to talk about. It's not just preparing the nursery and the pram and the cot, like all the things that I did for my first baby. So I think this is going to be a really valuable episode for anyone who is pregnant. For those who haven't heard about you, let's hear a little bit about you, Jen. Who are you?
Who am I? Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Jen Butler. So my business is Jen Butler Early Parenting Support. Essentially, I am here to support parents in preparing for their new babes in their first 12 months of life and really getting a feel for how they can get to know, understand, and support their babe really confidently. And making that transition into parenthood, whether it's your first or third or fifth, a lot more smoother. So that's my jam. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, love it. Let's go straight into it, Jen. How should parents prepare for a baby?
Well, I love the fact that you touched upon this whole, what most parents do versus what we should actually do. There's so much I want to talk to here. Firstly, I do want to share that I was doing exactly the same as what you said for my first son. So I was a maternal and child health nurse before I had my first son. So I'm not going to lie, I was actually pretty cocky. I was like, what else do I need to know? Like, I literally have a master's degree in child, family, and community nursing. But there is a lot of limitations to what that actually teaches in terms of the practicality and the depth of what it takes to understand a baby. So I did what every other parent does, and I excitedly prepared the nursery, got all the baby stuff. And don't get me wrong, so fun. It is like rite of passage as a parent to do all of that stuff. But I fell short, and I know I'm not alone in doing this. And it wasn't until I had my son in my arms and I was like, what the hell am I doing? What am I seeing? What am I observing? What does that mean? What does this mean? And that feeling, I remember, that was 8 years ago. I'm a mother of 3 now, but that was 8 years ago. And I can still remember the way I felt and all of that. And I know that this isn't the same experience for everyone, of course, but this was very much a reflection of my experience. And I think about how much I wish that I had spent some of that 9-10 months of pregnancy actually learning about how to understand your babe's cues. And the way that I guess remedied that back 8 years ago is I started to read some really popular parenting books, some baby sleep books. And I mean, they just didn't fit my son. I actually remember feeling worse because he wasn't following what the book said. I remember almost feeling frustrated. Why aren't you doing what the book says, Max? And I mean, obviously through everything I understand now, I know why. So with all of this being said, this is a very long-winded way of getting to the point, but that age-old saying, nothing prepares you for parenthood, I personally believe needs to be burnt to the ground, because there is so much that you can do to just learn ahead of having your babe what some of those cues are that babies do show us, because they have a remarkable way of communicating to us beyond just crying. Crying is just one way. That if we know what we're looking for, then we're able to actually respond. And the confidence that instills in parents is, I see it all the time. The parents who have, gone in with a bit of understanding, it changes the game for them. So if I can summarize all of that, it's that they're even without having a baby in your arms, there's so much learning you can do before you actually have that baby in your arms.
Absolutely. It's that whole notion of being proactive rather than reactive. And I talk about it from a physical sense. Let's not wait until you're feeling weak and you've got the pelvic floor issues and you're achy and sore. Let's do what we can to prevent that even happening in the first place. And it's the same with parenting. I was totally reactive with my first baby. And my second.
I was totally reactive too. And I even learned my lesson, even though I had done it before, it's what's that saying? Fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on, or whatever it is. I think I completely stuffed that up. But I was I have learned from my mistakes. And even though I'm a seasoned mum going into having my second babe, I'm not going to be complacent, because every baby is different. And boy, oh boy, were my 2 boys so, so different. And I think there's this real age-old, I hear it a lot, oh, well, I'll just wait and see what sort of baby I'm going to have. Well, that's that reactive. That's that reactive. The thing is that, yes, you might have this super chilled baby. Their temperament just lends themselves to going with the flow, but we don't know. And if that's not the case, then if it's like my experience with my first son, who he was not a chill baby. He did not go with the flow. Like that was just really hard for me and my personality type. And we had there wasn't a lot of support that we had. There were a lot of things that were going on, but that felt really hard. So yeah, I am in complete agreement with that real proactive versus reactive parenting.
And I'd love to go into some practical things, like what are some actual things we can do before giving birth. But first, I do just want to ask, when do you think parents or parents-to-be should start to think about the lines of, to think about this in terms of preparing for birth? When should parents start?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot because I have two programs. I have Raising Newborns and I have Raising Babies, which is essentially like the instruction manual that you wish you had when you left the hospital. And so I will have expecting parents DM me on Instagram or whatever, and they're like, what's the best time to start? And I'm in full support of people preparing and parents preparing for childbirth and really understanding, how they want to move into preparing for labour and birth and understanding how it all works. But somewhere in that last trimester is the perfect time because you can do your childbirth education, you can be prepared, do all of those things, and then usually mat leave starts somewhere between 34 to 36 weeks. And that 4 to 6 weeks, if Bub goes to term, that 4 to 6 weeks is such a beautiful time that you can actually spend doing some learning and you're going to think that you're not retaining it. But it's one of those things that when you actually have your baby, oh yes, I was expecting this, or this hasn't completely hit me square in the face, because I remember in my learning about this. And so I feel like those that beginning of the maternity leave is such a beautiful time to just get your head in the right. What's some things that I need to know game?
Yeah, I love that. I think there's, look, you might feel free to disagree with me, but I think there's 4 key things that women need during pregnancy. One is obviously to prepare for childbirth in whichever way they feel works for them. 2 is to prepare for breastfeed or get the breastfeeding support. 3 is to get the baby support. And then I'm going to add, get the support for you and your body, which is where I come in during pregnancy and postpartum. So that means you're encompassing not just your baby stuff, but also you, in your physical and mental health as well. So that's the 4 aspects.
I'm in complete agreement with that, because they talk about the dyad and the triad, that it's when a baby comes into it, and obviously, that changes with the more babies that we have, but we are each our own beings. And I see it all the time that all of a sudden everything goes towards the baby. But what about mum and dad? Without you being okay, both physically, emotionally, it's a two-way street. It's so important to both be okay, and it feeds into each other. I think that's such a beautifully holistic way of looking at it. So love that.
Yeah. So on that note, and this is because I'd love to discuss some things that we can do before we give birth.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to first ask, how can a mum prepare herself for a baby? So not prepare for the baby, but prepare herself. And I guess we've sort of been talking about it, and I can talk about it from a physical perspective, but from your perspective, how do you recommend?
I can't help but draw upon my own experiences when I talk to this, and I think that everyone's experience is going to be so, beautifully unique. But I think back to naive Jen circa 2015, heading into motherhood. We were living in Melbourne, and I'm actually from country Victoria, living here now. And this is the part where they say nothing can prepare you for parenthood, but I feel like through conversations you absolutely can. And this is why I want to share my reflection. the lack of preparation around who are going to be my support people. Who am I going to turn to if I'm not feeling so great? And this is all stuff I very much experienced. So we didn't have anyone in our local, 5 to 30K vicinity who were going to be able to lend that hand. The conversations to have with your partner around things like, how is life going to look for us? How are we going to delegate this parenting role? If I'm a breastfeeding mum, how can you help me and support me? So it's these broader, like, social concepts and constructs and conversations, lots of cons in there, to talk to, I think. And actually recently I have been, I think actually on my own podcast, The Happy Baby Show, I did an episode recently called How to Get on the Same Parenting Page. And the purpose of that was, ideally these conversations should be had in pregnancy where they're not like serious conversations. It's just like, hey, let's really think about this. Like, what, like, and I give prompts in the episode. And it is just to start to think about these, the support aspects of things and how relationships can change and that preparation. So, you cover the physical part, but I think that really is such a great way to just think about things. We obviously preempting, that's a part that we actually don't know how we are personally going to feel until we are in that. Like, something I struggled with was the isolation. But for other people, they're like, this is heavenly. Like, I get out, I go for a walk. I'm so happy being in my own company with my babe. So lots of nuances that make us very different in how we experience that side of things. But it's just about thinking about it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, yes, we could prepare ourselves and think about it, but it keeps evolving too. That whole notion of matrescence, the becoming of a mother, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't suddenly leave, in my opinion, a hospital, a mother. Like, it's actually an emotional transition that can take months and months and months.
And I would say that with all of my 3 children, so I now have 8, 6 and 2-year-old, like, even in the last 2 years, how I have evolved as a mother and I don't know, it's just, I think it's ever evolving as the kids' developmental changes, like, stages change, and like, in a beautiful way. And with that can also come some challenges and resistance. And I think that's really normal and important to talk to. I think I didn't hear about matrescence until, I'm going to say, it was with Georgie, which is so crazy to me. How could I have gone through 6+ years of parenting, 4+ years of parenting without understanding this? And when I understood it, I was like, oh my God, Jen, like, no wonder you felt this way. I really pushed, I pushed against it. I was like, no, I want to just keep me. And like, don't get me wrong, I believe that it is so important to still have, like, you are still you are not just this new person, and who you were before parenthood doesn't exist anymore. But I think I was just like, pushing too hard from the other way.
Today's episode is brought to you by Baby Jogger, making parents' lives easier. For active families, Baby Jogger will be your go-to. Their strollers are designed with your comfort and convenience in mind, allowing you to embrace the joys of parenthood while staying active. With Baby Jogger's well-known quick fold technology, you can effortlessly fold your stroller with just one hand, making it a breeze to store and transport. We know that every family has different needs, and Baby Jogger has you covered. They offer a wide range of lightweight, compact options, from single to double strollers to all-terrain models. No matter your lifestyle, you'll find the perfect fit. Whether you're navigating through busy streets or tackling rough terrains, their strollers provide a smooth and enjoyable ride for both you and your little ones. And let's not forget about growing families. Whether you're expecting another child or planning for the future, Baby Jogger is there every step of the way. To learn more about their incredible strollers and find the perfect fit for your family, visit their website today on babyjogger.com.au and use the code FIT20. That's FIT20 for 20% off any full-priced product from Baby Jogger. Oh, I'm the same. I didn't think that I didn't want to let having a new baby for my first change anything. Yeah. Like I still wanted to be able to just easily pop out the house to a cafe with a friend and, it was a real struggle because it was actually then when I did go to see a friend at the cafe, that was a real struggle to time the baby feeds and pack the bag and make sure I'd remembered everything and not have a screaming baby during the coffee. And I remember one particular coffee date with a friend, I think I got home in tears because that was just a bit of that evolution of, this is different now. Like this, it does get easier again. Going for a coffee, mums, like if you're listening, I can now go for a coffee easily.
So important for mums to know too is like you can feel in challenging times that I have a vivid memory going back to like my reflections. I remember Max was about 4 weeks and I remember having this like overwhelming feeling of, oh my God, this is my life now. Like it was a very hard feeling to process an emotion to process and feel at the time. But like it was just this like a blip in the parenting timeline. But I didn't know that back then because I didn't have the hindsight of how things change and evolve as your baby grows. So for anyone who's listening who perhaps is feeling something like that, know that everything does change and evolve and things get so much easier.
I guess it's life, isn't it? It's not the same as when we're at uni and school. And like my youngest, we were saying off air, my youngest has just started school and that was a huge transition for me. And I had this combination of mourning, like I wanted another baby.
Yes.
Very nearly went down that track, but anyway, we didn't, thank goodness. 3 is plenty for our family. So I wanted, mourning the loss of a preschooler, mourning that, that extra bit of independence they all had, and it was a huge transition to how I structured my day as well, having all kids at school. So it does keep evolving, doesn't it?
It really does, and it's so funny that you say that, Kath, because I was only like Georgie's just 2, so we're not at school yet, but yet I can see how quickly she is going to be starting, 4-year-old kinder, and that's that real. And she's our last. 3 is more than enough for us too. I think that I've sort of had this moment lately where I'm like, right, like we don't have a lot of time before all of this structure changes once more. So I'm going to try my darndest to live in the present.
Yeah. And I felt every time my youngest reached a new stage, there was a little bit of mourning, when she no longer needed nappies or when she no longer needed a cot and she moved into a big bed. And I was like, so it is a transition.
The last is hard. Like the last is the last of, like I recently shared about, 12 months on from weaning from breastfeeding, I still, like I don't sit here and, weep or anything, but I'm just like, maybe I should have done a bit. Like it's the end of an era, and that's it's sad, but also happy and beautiful and so much feels. Parenting is so many feels.
Absolutely. Okay, on that note, let's go back to pregnancy.
Happy talk.
Happy talk. To finish off with, I'd love to get a little bit practical.
Yeah.
What are some things that parents-to-be can do before they give birth to help prepare them for life with a baby?
So one of my favorite things that I love educating on is expectations. So realistic expectations, because I truly believe that the courtesy of some outdated, like it could be parenting advice that's given to us from older generations, not always. It can be advice from friends. It can be stuff that we were like the popular parenting books. Like there is a lot of stuff that is it's not evidence-based. When we go in to parenthood with unrealistic expectations, which I 100% did with my first son, it can literally make or break your experience. So a lot of the things that parents can be tormented by or like challenged by, when we understand that actually it's all based on normal development. It doesn't take away the difficulty per se, but there's a huge mindset shift that happens when things are actually normalized and you're not fighting what is just developmentally supposed to be. So, for me, that like I break things down and talk about things in terms of feeding, normal feeding expectations, sleep expectations, and then development expectations. So like for me, it's just going in with like a really realistic understanding of what life will most likely look like based on, so it's not just, every baby is going to be unique, but when we look at it from like a developmental timeline, these things are most likely going to occur with, of course, nuances and differences from baby to baby. So that's one thing that I think is so very powerful. And then, of course, off that comes like, within the expectations, it is my biggest passion is about teaching families how to understand baby cues. So when I talk about baby cues, I'm talking about like what their early feeding cues are, because babies will tell us that they're hungry before they start to cry. Babies will tell us that they're tired before they start to cry. So, they're two examples of cues of, that I could go into many, many more, but they're big ones, especially in that, really early newborn period, where it's like, if you understand what you're looking for, you can respond. You have a more settled baby. They cry less, they sleep better, they thrive. Like, it's a big deal. And you can learn about what you're looking for ahead of giving birth. And then when you've got this baby in your arms, you're like, hey, I can see that. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just, I think it's so powerful, so powerful.
That just brings back memories. I wish I had known all that with the baby cues. I remember distinctly I had a maternal child health nurse appointment followed by a mother's group, and it was all in the same place and I timed them perfectly, so one after the other. And I knew my baby was tired on the way to the maternal child health nurse, but she had to get weighed and measured, and I thought, that's fine, I'll put her to sleep during mother's group. But I tried the whole time during mother's group to rock her to sleep, and she was getting more and more tired until she absolutely lost it, like the hysterical cry. And I'd got into a separate room and I was feeling a bit emotional myself. And this midwife heard me, and maternal child health nurse, and she came out and she's like, oh, that sounds like an overstimulated baby. And I knew it was, but she managed to help settle my baby, which I couldn't do. So I was very grateful for that. But just that comment, oh, you've got an overstimulated baby. And I walked home. She said, off you go. Don't wait for the end of mother's group. Just take her for a walk now. And so she pushed me out the door and I walked home just bawling my eyes out, thinking, I've overstimulated my baby.
Isn't it amazing, like the words that stick with us? And I mean, babies do get overstimulated, like they do, we all have those stories and those days where we can say, yep, that's happened. And I think there's a huge conversation about how we word these things. And, when you're already feeling overwhelmed and vulnerable, and, a lot of the time you feel like I don't even feel like I'm doing a good job here, but you are. And this is all, you're forever learning. Parenting initiates the beginning of a lifetime of learning in the most beautiful way. So I think we all have those experiences, Kath.
Well, that's right. And in hindsight, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but at the time it was huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing, Jen. I think that has been a beautiful conversation. How can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your amazing programs?
Yes, well, I hang out on Instagram far too much, don't we all? So I'm at Jen Butler Early Parenting on Instagram. So my website's www.jenbutler.com.au. And I also have a really great resource that I wanted to share too, in case anyone wanted it. I think it's just a really nice way to take the overwhelm out of a crying baby. And I think it runs off beautifully from what we were just talking about. So it's called the Crying Newborn Checklist. And it's my way of trying to help families when you're in that moment with the crying baby to just be able to go, okay, let's tick off the list, because really there's about 6 real reasons or core reasons why your baby's going to be crying. So I might share that link with you to pop just in your show notes, Kath, but it's also on the website, I will say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's free for anyone if they want to check that out.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jen. It's always a pleasure to chat. We might have you on again in another year or so.
Well, bring it on. I love talking to you, Kath, so always happy. Thank you for having me.
Chat to you soon. And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Jen Butler and myself at fitnessmama.com/podcast. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me soon for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.